Hey guys, and welcome back to the Wally modelling series. I can finally say that I can start working on this personal project again properly, because I finished uni now, so finally, yay, we can get the tutorials rolling. So the next part that we're going to start working on, I think, is this neck piece. I haven't worked on this for a while again, but hopefully we can get right into this and get working. So the first thing I want to do, I think, is sort out my parts that I haven't named yet. You can name them whatever you want, as long as you're gonna remember what they are. Okay, so I'm gonna start with this piece, so I'm just gonna call it neck cube top, and then this is gonna be neck cylinder left, this is gonna be neck cylinder right, and these are going to be the screws. So neck cylinder, if I can spell, the screw one, I'm just going to copy that and then paste it and change it to 2 so I don't have to type it loads. And these little things and the shortcuts that I keep using, these are really important, because once you start working on bigger projects that take, well, like this one, if you actually done it in your own time, it would take you probably like quite a long time to do, 10 to 15, maybe 20 hours to model. So these little things might only take a second or two, but it saves a lot of time over a long period of time, okay? So it's really good practice to get into using shortcuts and so on, because they'll make your life a lot quicker. So we're going to start off, let me just see what's going on in our block layer, and we've already done these pieces, so I'm just going to go ahead and delete them. So obviously we're going to start working on this cylinder part, and also there is a part that connects this cylinder to this one. I looked at some other references, so again we can start improvising with this a little bit more. So the first thing I'm going to actually do is just make this 2 pieces, and instead of making it from scratch, we're actually going to go ahead and borrow this piece from up here, I think, okay, just to save time. And reusing assets and so on and modifying them or changing them is really good, because again it saves you a lot of time. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and delete these 2 things, and I'm just going to nick this top one up here. So I'm going to Control D to duplicate, move it down, and I'm also going to go ahead and just zero out the transformations and rotations, just so I don't get so confused of what's going on. Okay, so I'm going to move this up and just go into my side view just to move this somewhere to a proper place, go into my front view and just get this moved over. Obviously this is at the wrong place, but I think we can delete this as well, because we're gonna change that a bit around. So now that I have this moved roughly to the right place, I'm just going to go into my perspective mode and start rotating this. So it's going to get rotated this way. So it's going to be, I think, 90 degrees, like so. And we're also going to go ahead and rotate it all the way around this way, which is going to be minus 90 here, I think. There we go. Okay. So now that I got this rotated to how I want it, I'm going to go ahead and make sure it's positioned at the right place. So I'm going to move this down in my side view, and also, as you can tell, we can go ahead and scale this about. So I'm just going to move it roughly to the right place, scale it up, maybe scale it a little bit this way as well, like so, and that's looking pretty good. And just make sure I check in my front view as well. So mainly I'm going to work in the front view, so actually I'm going to make this a little bit thinner, like so. And I think we're also going to go ahead and make this a little bit taller. So not spot on reference, I'm just going with my eye, it's fine. And then I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this and just go ahead and scale it -1 in the Z. Actually, it's going to be a little bit more, probably like so. Actually, I messed this up. I'm just going to duplicate, and instead of scaling -1 in the Z, I'm going to just put a minus sign in front, and that should do the trick. So I'm just going to move this where it should be, like so, and now we got our support things sorted. So I'm just going to turn that off my, actually you can turn off the head just to save some performance. And we can go ahead and start working on the cylinder. So the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and create a cylinder. Well, surprise. So I'm just going to drag it out here, like so, probably about that size. Doesn't really matter because we're going to rescale this, and I messed it up because I didn't drag out a height. And this is what happens if you don't model for a while, but it's fine, we'll get right back into it. So I just dragged out a random height for now. It doesn't really matter because you're going to rescale this. And now I'm going to go ahead and come into here and just drag this up somewhat. Go into my side view, and you're going to go ahead and rotate this roughly the right amount. Probably that should do it. We'll see in a minute. So now I'm just going to move it roughly to the right position again, and scale to about there, make it a little bit longer like so, and that should do the trick. Okay, so we got our cylinder piece. Don't worry about that they're intersecting for now. We're just going to block out the basic shape. Well, we might as well fix it if we're here already. So I'm just going to go ahead and scale this in a little bit, and that looks about fine. And this is what happens when your references don't match up, but it doesn't matter too much. Okay, so we can just sort this out later. Ooh. So the first thing we're going to do is go ahead and select all these bits, and actually I'm going to go ahead and isolate that piece. Object, select, isolate, face, and going to go ahead and select all these. And gonna go ahead and tear off my edit mesh and hit extrude. Press R to scale, and actually we might as well move it out first. So just gonna move it out a little bit to about, if you can tell on the reference, to about here. And I'm just gonna go ahead and scale it in a tiny bit. You can't really tell so much on the reference, but it is scaled in. So now that I have that, it looks a little bit too long, so I'm just going to go back a little bit. And for the sake of reality a little bit, we're going to go ahead and extrude in again, and extrude again. And we're going to drag it inside, because there will be another cylinder sitting inside this one that will control what's going on. So I'm just going to drag it out to about there. It doesn't really matter how deep, it's just for that little extra detail. And for here I'm just going to go ahead and extrude again and scale in, so we don't have to add that extra edge loop in, because we have to reselect these faces and so on. So while I'm here, also going to add in that edge loop inside here, so we'll hold that shape once we smooth it. Now if I come out, I'm going to go ahead and isolate this piece again. If I didn't add that edge loop, that would have been handy. So I'm just going to delete that, isolate, so I'll have an easier time in adding these extra edge loops. So now we can go back to our into edge loop, and I'm going to start adding these edges so this will hold its shape properly. So I'm going to add one here as well. Depending on how rough, tight you want it to smooth, that's how far you should add these loops. So I want them quite tight, so I'm going to go ahead and add them there. And we also need one on the bottom here, and unlucky for us, we're just going to go ahead and select all these faces again, on the back side of this, and I think I selected something else as well. Bum, 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 bum. There we go. Extrude, scale, in, and bam, we got our piece. And if I smooth this now, it should look pretty good. Okay, so now our next task is get a cylinder right inside this, and you might be like, oh god, what a mission it's going to be to make sure that it fits exactly right and everything, but no, we're going to use a trick for this. So I'm going to unsmooth and go inside our cylinder, and we're going to go ahead and select all these faces, so the inner faces, and basically here all I did is select that face, and then if I double click this face, it will loop it around. Okay, so it will save us some time. Loop it here and loop it here, and then we're obviously going to need all these. And the reason why I'm not clicking and dragging, because it will select outer faces as well. Okay, so what we're going to do is go to mesh and click on extract, and now what you're going to get is you're going to get a group with two pieces. Okay, so now we're going to use this inner piece that we just extracted to extrude it to be our next cylinder. Okay, so pretty straightforward. Hit extrude, drag out a height like so, and if you have a look and isolate this, we got a cylinder sorted. So now what we're going to do is add our usual extra edge loops, just so it will hold its shape. And lucky for us, these are already added because we extracted those as well. So now that I added those in there, I'm going to go ahead and hit smooth and have a look how it's looking. It's looking pretty sweet. So I'm going to smooth this as well, and if you select both and isolate, you can have a look how it's such a nice tight fit, and it looks perfect for what we need. You could also scale this just a tiny bit, just to give it that extra realism. I mean, this piece ain't going to be seen an awful lot, so it doesn't really matter, but these little details do make a difference in how it looks. Okay, so I'm just going to undo that scale because it seems like it was a bit too much, but that's fine. So now that we got this piece, you're going to have to go ahead and create the piece that actually connects in, and that basically is an extrusion of this piece. It might look kind of ugly when we do it, but it does the job. It doesn't create any five-sided faces and so on, so it will be exactly fine. It will make some triangles, but it's fine. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and isolate this piece again so I get a clear idea of what I'm doing, and we're going to go ahead and select these faces on the side. So you're going to select all these faces. I think we should have made our cylinder with equal amount of faces, but it will be fine, trust me. So I think I'm going to do it this way. Oh, it is. Sorry, I'm just being blind, but that's fine. So now that I selected half of the faces, you're going to go ahead and hit extrude, scale, and we're going to scale this inwards. Okay, so uniformly, like so. And this will be the arm that comes out. So I'm going to go ahead and hit extrude again, scale in, so it gives us that supporting edge, so we don't have to add it later on because it would be quite a mission to add this with insert edge loop. So now we're going to extrude again and drag up, you guessed it, so it will give us that extra edge loop, extrude again, drag up, just a random one, and I'm pretty sure it will fit, so I can come out just to make sure. So there we go, we can drag it up a little bit more to about there, isolate. Ooh, that wasn't a good idea. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and hit extrude again, drag it up a tad. If I can find it, there we go, extrude again, scale in, And there we go, we got our piece created. So if I just come in here and isolate this again just to make sure I've done it right. So we got our edge loops there and there, we got our edge loops there and there. So once I hit smooth, it should be fine. Now you notice that this corner gets smoothed quite a bit, so we would kind of need edge loops going here and here, but all we're going to do for the sake of simplicity, and it will do the job a little bit, it's not going to make it perfectly a tight edge, but it will sort out this roundness a tiny bit. And I actually quite like the way it looks when it's rounded a little bit. Okay, so we're just going to use our insert edge loop tool, and we're going to click here. And as you can tell, it doesn't go all the way around, but that's fine. And you'll see in a minute that it is fine. So I'm going to put one there as well. And you might say, oh dear, we made all these and this doesn't go around and so on, but it's actually fine, because if you come in here and go to mesh, clean up, and then click faces with more than 4 sides, okay, so and click apply. As you can tell, we don't have any faces with more than 4 sides, so it is fine, okay. If we made loads of faces with like 5-sided faces and so on, it would be an issue, but this was actually a triangle. So if you have a look, when we added this extra edge loop in here, it actually made it into a quad. Okay, so now it got 4 sides, and same with this one. So when we added this loop in here, this triangle is now turned into a quad, and same with these. Okay, and here we made a rectangle. This is 4-sided, 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 and now this is 4-sided as well, and our triangle. Okay, so this is absolutely fine. Now if you smooth it, it's a little bit tighter, as you can tell. Now to make it even more tighter, we would have to add an edge loop going from here, but we're not going to do that. And I quite like the way it looks this way anyway. So now if I just come out of my isolation mode, we can see exactly what we just made. So we got this cylinder, and basically this is kind of going to work like a piston. So when Wally moves his head forward, these two things, so if we do rig this later on, this will be like one object. This two would be like merged together. So that means once we move the head forward, or the head would want to move forward, these would all be connected together, okay, as a hierarchy. And if he wanted to move it forward, if I did group this together, but I'm not gonna, because it would mess everything up. But basically this piece would move up and down and can move in this piece with it. Now when he wanted to rotate his head, this motor or piece here would rotating all these pieces. Okay, so it would be quite a fairly complicated rig, but that's how it would work. So every time you model, you got to think about how this would actually work. And obviously this whole thing can rotate on these two support things. So what we're going to need is a screw going through here, okay, that will go into this piece. So whenever you model, it's a good idea to think about how is this thing actually going to work in real life. If we actually made this or constructed this, how would this actually work? And it will make your life a lot easier, or not easier, but your models will be a lot more realistic. And now I can tell already that I don't really like where these support things are sitting. So, because if we did have this screw going, let's see, we're just going to nick this screw like we did with this other thing, because why would we make a brand new one when this will do the job just fine? So I'm just going to go into my side view, and I'll probably actually scale this up a tad, move into the middle. So if we had this piece going through here, I'm just going to scale this up for the sake of this. So just imagine this screw was going through there. It would kind of have to go through the middle of this, okay, to get the weight and everything correct. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to select all these and move it down. So I'm going to move this piece down to about the middle of the cylinder. So I'm going to select these two. Okay, so this is where the screw would be sitting basically, because it would kind of sit in the middle of the cylinder to get the weight ratios right and everything. So it would sit roughly there. Okay, so now what we're going to have to do is move our support accordingly, because again this would be sitting in the middle. So if I just turn our block layer on, this piece would have to come down. So I'm just going to select both of them actually and move it down to about there. Okay, so now this way this screw is actually fairly realistic when it goes through, but now that I messed up the scale, I'm just going to go ahead and duplicate it and bring it down again. Go to my front view, drag this out to about there, because we don't need it actually going through the mesh. And also I wanted to scale this up. To about here. So I'm just going to go ahead and move this down. And we're going to, actually I'm going to tug this in a tiny bit more. To about there. Probably even more. Like so. I'm just going to duplicate, move it to the other side as well. Ooh. There we go. Okay, so we got our neck piece basically created. So if I just turn our head back on, turn the block off, we got Wally's top half basically finished. So the bit that I wanted to do just before we go is we want to name all these things and sort out, because everything is a big mess right now. So what we're actually going to do now is get all the neck pieces together into a group called neck and put it in a layer. Get all the head pieces that are already done, and actually this is part of the neck, the head as well, but that is fine. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna drag these two things out of this group and delete. And we're going to go ahead and name these. So this will be neck bottom cylinder shaft. Neck bottom cylinder inner. So now basically we got all the pieces for the neck, and I'm also going to rename these screws neck support bottom screw left, neck support bottom screw right. So we got everything named correctly, and I'm just going to go ahead and get all these pieces together. And I also need these two pieces that are actually in the neck. So this needs to come out and this needs to come out, and we'll name this neck support left. And I'm just again gonna copy paste right, and close this, get all these together and hit Ctrl G, name it neck, and we're done. And I'm also gonna, actually this is on the neck layer, them pieces. I'm gonna go ahead and ungroup, empty this layer, and get our actual neck and add it to that layer. And let's see the head. Gonna get all these and add them to the head. So now what we have is basically a whole layer and a whole group for this next section, and we got this for the whole head section. This technically is still the neck, but it's fine. So yeah, we're all done and ready to go for the next part, where we're gonna go ahead and move on to this piece, which is gonna be the body. And after that, once we've done that, we can move on to the cool threads, and we're nearly done. Yay! So I'll see you guys in the next part.